Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast. We had quite a good week last week with very clean price action. There was more than 30% in the market in the pairs we were discussing the previous week before. I took two trades actually, one pound US dollar and the other one was Canadian dollar yen. Both trades are in more detail described in my trading journal, and you can find the link in the description for a more detailed look. We now start with the DXY on the weekly time frame, and we see we had not very much progression last week. We ended the week on a doji, bearish doji candle, and we are still in an area where it could go either way. Going down to the 4-hour time frame, we were discussing these levels here. We were discussing actually this level here as the last line in the sand for the long, and then we were saying that if this level here breaks and we see a continuation below, it's open for this range to trade, because this here would be the start of this previous volume accumulation here for the last leg up. What we saw last week, early last week, price reversed a bit. He had a bit of a pullback, retesting this low then here and sold off and made a new low. So we are now basically below the area, but we want to see some form of confirmation and continuation below. Otherwise, we have to be careful. It could also just be the start of a bigger structure. Price could go back one more time, form something like this, an expanding structure before then selling off. Or we also know expanding structures could be continuation structure, so price can go back in, break back in here, and we see something like that, then we know the long is still in place. So we do want to see some form of continuation, confirmation below this low here, preferably something like that, and then we know it's open for at least this level here. Going to euro US dollar on the daily first. We can see we are here a bit in no man's land, right? So last week was no progression in the overall price action. So this is the Monday candle here, and this is basically the price action from last week. So we can see that we are stalling here. We still have this room here to go to the high here for a potential 1, 2, 3, and going down to the 1-hour time frame directly. I'm not really interested to, better the 4-hour for a bit more overview. I'm not interested to trade within this area here. So I will wait for either price to reach this level here, or there is an argument if the DXY is retracing and making a bigger flag before selling off. We have this volume accumulation here in this last leg, and there is an argument for the euro to come back down one more time before we then see a long. So we would then get a 1, 2, 3, and so these are then the two levels I'm interested in. I'm looking for this level here, plus I want to see what price is doing if it reaches this level here to the high. Within, I'm not taking any trades. Australian dollar, US dollar on the daily first, on the daily time frame. We can see we finished actually, we discussed that last week, we finished this expanding structure and we were then looking for some form of reaction in this area. We did get a reaction, not as strong as we were hoping for. So we identified this area here to the left as a more significant area of interest, and are now looking for a continuation long. We did get this very nice bullish flag just on top of the structure for a long continuation. However, we did not even tap in the next higher level here. We still left the gap. So overall, with the positioning of the DXY, I'm still looking for a long, as long as we are trading above this level here. So basically outside or on through the high of the structure, I'm looking for long. So if we get price coming back in here and giving me some form of a lower time frame bull flag continuation, I'm happy to enter a long in this area because I can easily manage the trade into this high here. Or if it's then the trade, or if we form some form of a bigger expanding structure before we then sell off in this area, that's fine as well. We take a sign of the market and we will pivot if we reach this area. So we are trading either in this area or in this area, nothing in between. Pound US dollar, similar price action. We just start here on the 4-hour time frame. We finish this structure, the 1, 2, 3. We then failed to sell off. We made a continuation. Here we have some areas to the left which are interesting. we identified actually there are quite a few, right? So we are here just through that. This is quite an aggressive area of interest here because we have some liquidity in this area, and the next one would be here. And we can see now we are still outside this structure here, and as long as we are trading outside this level here, this liquidity area here, I'm still more leaning towards a long. So I'm looking now for price to come back into this liquidity area and then looking for a long to finish the last leg into at least this area here. Again, on the other hand, if we see the DXY turning around, selling off more aggressively, we will get some impulsive move back below this level, basically within structure again. And if we then get a bear flag continuation here, we will take the sign of the market and then preferably even retesting this liquidity area for a short and change the bias. US dollar Canadian, we discussed that in detail the week before as well. We had this washout here, then a strong impulse, and we are now here. We had this consolidation and then finally the breakout, and we were looking for a continuation here outside the structure. Unfortunately, we did not get it already here. It's forming a bit of a more complex structure. I was actually hoping after this strong leg here and this volume accumulation that we get a smaller continuation here before we then form something bigger, just for a better sequence. However, we are starting to form a bigger structure. I'm still leaning towards a short here as long as we get a 1, 2, a potential 3 retesting this whole liquidity here and then selling off. I want to see a more weighted time frame here. So at least a clean 4-hour reversal structure within this area, or then maybe even a potential reversal on the 4-hour at least, and then seeing a 1-hour bear flag continuation and then entering a short here. Because if we break back into the structure, then yeah, I'm not interested in anything. I don't want to trade longs in this area at all. Euro Australian dollar. Euro Australian dollar on the weekly time frame. First, we have this on watch for a while as well, and we were looking for a short continuation. We see we ended the week on a wick again, so we are kind of neutral in terms of price action. Going to the 4-hour time frame, we can see here we had fairly clean price action. We identified this level here as an area of interest because this was the start of the last impulsive leg to the upside and finishing the structure before we then started with this more complex structure here. And then we left the gap the previous week. We had a very healthy retrace and then sold off. There was a small liquidity area here, so a V-shaped recovery, and then we sold off. And on the way down, better on the 1-hour, we can see it clearer on the 1-hour. We had this initial leg to the downside, a small continuation here, a bigger one here. We left a small hook point, a V-shaped recovery, another sell-off, another continuation, and then we left this small liquidity area. We get a V-shape with the 1, 2, 3, and breaking above into this liquidity point before we then closed the gap we identified the week before. So we can see it's very, very clean price action on the whole run with quite a few potential entries. And we actually now finished this run. So price then failed to continue. As long in this area, I was initially looking for a short continuation here. I actually even locked this trade as a miss trade for me. It's on the lower time frame, but it was very clean price action and within sequence and proportion for the last leg. So that's a miss trade for me last week. And then here I was looking for a continuation short to break out for the next leg. We did not get that. Instead, price then creeped back up, even impulsively back into this area here. But we can actually identify this structure as finished. So what is price doing here? We are now in a neutral territory. If price is here from a kind of a value area, and if we see some impulse down and the lower time frame bear flag continuation, then we know, okay, it's just another third triple top basically in this area for the sell-off. However, it's also possible that we get a completely new structure in this area, and right now I'm leaning more towards a Euro Australian dollar long again, because we closed the gap and we are in an area where we could push higher. So I'd like to see a clear bull flag continuation in this area, and I'm then happy to take a long from here. Euro Canadian dollar on the weekly first. On the weekly time frame, we were looking again for also for a while already for a continuation here to close this gap here, because that's the start of this running channel before we then got the last leg to the upside. So it would make sense for price to go back down one more time and closing this gap. And then we saw some change in momentum, but we closed the last week still slightly bullish, but on a strong week. And going down to the 4-hour time frame in terms of price action, we can see we have here a liquidity area. We have a potential 1, 2, 3 here, quite a strong middle section. And if we now form a 1, 2, 3 into this area with at least a weighted 4-hour reversal here, I'm happy to take a short in this area to then finish the last leg to the downside. Swiss francs yen, these yen pairs were very, very nice last week. We are starting on the weekly first, and we can see we had this indecisive price action first. We started with the gap 3 weeks ago, very bearish week. We still left the gap here. We did not close the gap to this low here. Then we had a full retrace, a bullish retrace, and now again a bearish retrace again. And I'm now looking to at least finish this leg here. This is quite a lot of bearish momentum, and I'm looking for a continuation in bearish momentum here, going to the 4-hour time frame, actually even better to the 1-hour time frame. There's some things to discuss. We were looking initially after this impulsive move to the upside here for a potential long, and we can see we had a nice 1, 2, 3 with the liquidity area here, and then we got this failed structure. So it failed to push higher. So this gives actually, this failed structure would then support the change in bias and the short even more. We left this significant area of interest here. It's a liquidity point, and then a very nice V-shaped recovery, and then a sell-off, right? So, and both was quite impulsive. We had here an impulsive follow-through candle, and then we formed a very nice 1, 2, 3 structure into this smaller liquidity point on the lower time frame, and then sold off. This is a very nice bread and butter entry here for a short, and you could even argue that this V-shaped recovery on the 1 hour was also a short, which I obviously missed. I was in Canadian dollar yen. You will see that in a minute. So I'm now looking for, and we can see here after tapping this area here, we had a very healthy pullback. You could argue there is still a gap to this liquidity area here to the left, and then we sold off, and we are now trading below through price here to the left. And I'm now looking for a 1 hour, at least a 1 hour continuation here. We have a small liquidity area here, and I'd like to see a proper second base. I'm coming back one more time. So if we get that into London session here on Monday, then I'm happy to take a 1 hour structure here for a short continuation. Canadian dollar yen. This was also very, very nice trade. On the weekly shortly, we have the same picture like with Swiss francs yen. We had these two, actually 3 weeks, which were every week was basically then the opposite from the week before, and we ended on this very strong bearish week. We are sitting here on the low here from the last leg here, or from this very impulsive week here, but we still have a gap to this low here, or even to fill the wick here. So there's still enough room to the downside for potential short trades. Looking now on the 4 hour, or maybe straight to the 1 hour time frame, we have a similar picture here. We had this area of interest here to the left. We left the gap here, we left the gap here, and we had a nice V-shaped recovery, then a nice follow-through continuation pattern, and then here we got a very clean structure. We left a small liquidity point here. We are below this whole price action here, and we got a 1, 2, 3 into this liquidity point here. Even on the lower time frame, you had a structure within structure, another 1, 2, 3, and this allowed an entry in this area. That's actually a trade I took last week, which banked me a 5% on this run here to this area. And now I'm looking for a short continuation just through this level here, and preferably a clean structure here, another 1, 2, 3, at least a 2 touch, maybe a 3 touch continuation, retesting this low here for a short continuation. New Zealand dollar Canadian on the weekly time frame. We discussed it a few times. We have the gap here to the high, we have a gap here to the low, and we are within, right? But we know that New Zealand dollar Canadian is respecting this 3-touch structures fairly well. See that on the 4-hour time frame. We discussed this structure a few times. So we have this 1, 2, 3, and then we had that here as well in a smaller degree, and we are now seeing that we have the same here again, 1, 2, 3, and failed. Let me clean that a bit here shortly. And these two. So we have this liquidity area here to the left. We left the gap here, and we then, I'm now actually looking for the last leg up for a 3rd touch before we see some form of a bigger reaction or a potential bigger reaction in this area. Because we failed this short continuation here, instead we broke out this level and started to form a bullish continuation outside this whole price action here, and looking to the left, the next area which price could potentially turn around is the high here, and then it would make sense for price to tap into the higher liquidity area before we then see a turnaround. So I'm now looking for some retrace, back testing this structure here, and then some form of a long continuation. Then pound Swiss francs on the weekly. It's kind of a messy price action with a lot of wicks going down to the 4-hour time frame. We identified this area here, this liquidity area, for some time, because you can clearly see this was the start of this very aggressive impulse to the downside. So we were expecting some reaction in this area. We left some gaps a few times. We also left the gap here after, we can see that here a bit better. We have a gap here, then we had this expanding structure. We failed to sell off in this area. Instead, we went up again. We still failed to tap into this area and accumulated more volume, and then finally tapped into this liquidity area, and now getting some reaction here. We had this initial bearish continuation and then got the proper impulsive sell-off on Friday. This is already a bit too big for my liking, but in terms of positioning, if I get a 1 hour, at least a 1 hour continuation here, we go to the 1 hour time frame. If we get some form of a 1 hour bear flag continuation in this area, preferably retesting this low here, then I'm more than happy to enter a short and for the next bigger leg down. I am aware that we can also get some form of an expanding structure here, and price is then coming back one more time, so that's also okay. But just to manage to this low, when I can enter a tight stop here on a 3 touch, then I know this price action is deliberate enough that will give me enough room to at least manage the trade to these lows, and if it then goes, I'm in a good position. So yeah, that's it. That's my watch list for next week. Thanks for watching. See you next week. Bye bye.